users, right? Before, you had predictive AI or even self-driving cars, it was not as apparent as when you can go log into ChatGPT and you create a song that sounds like Drake, right? That kind of aha moment that you had, which was like the browser moment for internet, has really made kind of this generative AI phase really, really attractive.
Yeah, I agree. Prior to Thomson Reuters, I was at Microsoft, and we invested in a lot of AI as well. The advantage we have at TR is that we can invest in verticalization of AI. So the applications that are out there that are available now for legal, for tax, for fraud, for media, are real working apps where you can actually generate revenue from using that technology, either through speeding up your work or answering questions, same thing, faster. And you can actually, have a return on investment using those applications. And even on the infrastructure side of AI, prior to the last year or so, there was a lot of technology being built around, making better models, speeding things up. But now those are really being used to actually reduce the cost of those models and get them into market faster. So I love the fact that AI is now actually, you can prove that it makes money, so you can invest based on return, which is how we are supposed to invest.
Yeah, and definitely the data speaks to that. In the past 6 months, over $40 billion has been invested in AI startups. And I think, Jay, you have some news to make here live with our audience about Sapphire's commitment in the space.
That's right. We are announcing today that we are going to commit $1 billion to invest in AI-powered enterprises. Right? You guys are the first one to hear this. Thank you. We have been investing in this space for the last 20 years. So we have 60 AI-powered companies. But what we have realized is with this new trend of generative AI, there's a lot of things that have to be solved, all the way from the tool chain, right? You have to understand how developers are going to actually build these AI-powered enterprises, right? There's a lot of security concerns. I think we are talking about it. All the hallucinations, all the kind of wrong information it's providing, but also, how do you provide, data kind of sovereignty? All of those issues have to be solved. And then on top of that, there's going to be new generation of applications that's going to be built. And, the money part is only a small portion of what we are planning to do. We are going to start this whole initiative within our firm where it actually helps developers to figure out, okay, where do I go and train my models? How do I make them secure? What are the best kind of go-to-market strategies for getting these AI-powered applications out to the market? And it's going to be, some of it is learning that we have had from investing for the over 22 decades. But it's also going to be certain new things that we are going to have this platform where we're also going to collaborate with our entrepreneurs and learn and share it with the rest of the ecosystem.
That's amazing. And for background, the Sapphire Ventures has about $10 billion asset under management, and this is coming from your $3 billion uninvested capital.
That's right.
So it's a big commitment for the firm.
Exactly.
And Jay, I know both of you talked to a lot of the AI startups, and you said part of the commitment is to want to help them to build a better AI companies in this age. What are the bottleneck issues you are seeing a lot of AI startups these days are facing?
Go ahead.
Well, I think training models is tough, right? It's very expensive. So even with small startups, they have to find a way to, work through that problem first. I think Microsoft and Amazon and Google are all trying to work with those startups to reduce some of that cost and help them. And there's certainly some technology out there that's coming to the forefront as well that will reduce the cost of, getting those models built and getting the technology built. So I think that's interesting. We're looking at investing in a lot of that infrastructure layer because we, as Thomson Reuters, could use it internally, but our startups that are doing, AI verticalization can use it as well.
Yeah. I think the whole tool chain, how you build applications, how you monitor it, how you integrate it with other applications, all of those things have to be rewritten, right? It's not going to be like completely starting from zero, but the CI/CD pipeline, right? The DevOps tool chain to monitor these new generation of applications, how they kind of behave, security around all of that. All of these things have to be rebuilt. So there's a lot of activity. You see all these announcements, a lot of investment going on. But just like everything else, there's a lot of work to be done before you can have it becomes like part and parcel of what we do in our everyday life, right? I remember I'm old enough to have investing when people got the browser out first, right? And when every day something new would come out, Yahoo came out, Google came out, and now using a browser for doing anything is almost like second nature. People don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, also what makes your job both fun and hard in the same way is we are sitting in this big platform shift, and you have to do a lot of predictions versus whether something is just a fad and without kind of the foundation that has been completely set up, where to put your money on. So how do you think about the full stack of AI investment in terms of the foundation layer, in terms of infrastructure and application? Where are you spending most of your time on?
I think we're spending a lot of time in the verticalization of it, particularly in tax, legal, and fraud, in looking at those applications. But at the same time, we are looking at a lot of foundational infrastructure tech that would support both, like I said, internal and external investments. There's going to be more than one winner out there in a number of these categories. I mean, you look at the days of the internet, and you brought up the browser. I mean, it was Netscape, right? That was the hot browser. And then, Microsoft was kind of the slow roll, but in the end, Microsoft won, right? They ended up, and now, that's not the case at all, right? You're back and forth because ultimately Google owns that market now, right? And that's how they make their money through ads. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next, 5 to 10 years, really who comes out ahead. But I do think there's going to be more than one winner, both in the verticalization of AI applications and certainly in the infrastructure side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are looking, we kind of have two separate teams. One looks at application and one looks at infrastructure, right? On the application side, I think one of the big challenges is that who has distribution, right? You already have Microsoft out there. You already have Google out there with a lot of distribution, a lot of users. For them to add, certain kind of features which are based on generative AI is a lot easier. So you kind of have to pick and choose applications saying that, okay, how can this company survive? How can it create this data moat, right? In generative AI, I think one of the big things that's going to be is the feedback loop of getting the data back from the user so that you can retrain your models and make the models better. So figuring these things out is very critical. And then on the infrastructure side, as I said, everything is being rebuilt, right? I think the way you build a program is going to be rebuilt. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to go in for actually helping developers build their programs, right? How you go to APIs or kind of provide API documentation, write code, all of those things are going to change. So, so we are kind of as I said, we actually have a strategy group within our firm that is just thinking through all of these various issues to understand where we should be actually making bets.
To your point, Jay, the dynamic between startups and incumbents in this AI technology shift is really interesting. Yeah. If you look at the dollar invested in AI startups, actually a lot of them come from tech companies themselves.
That's right.
How do you guys evaluate that? Because I feel like they are both in competition in a way, but also work very closely in this age of AI.
Yeah, I think the incumbents have realized that, look, this is a wave that is coming, and they're much more, I think, this generation of CEOs who run these companies are much maybe smarter than the previous generation of tech companies, right? Because they have kind of grown in and they were the startups before. So they are kind of making sure that they have their ability to kind of see what things are developing, and by making these investments are also being able to kind of scoop them up at the right time.
That's good exit opportunities for you guys. And speaking of exit, Tamara, maybe you can talk about the case test acquisition did by Thomson Reuters, which I think it was an interesting example when big tech companies are thinking about build versus buy in this AI world.
Yeah, I mean, we're at an advantage in the market in general because we're going to do all three things, right? We're going to build, we're going to buy, we're going to invest, right? So from an investment perspective, we're looking at things that are horizon 3 and 4, like beyond, right? Smaller startups, we usually do Series A, some opportunistic seed deals, but those are things that are coming. It's going to take 3 or 4 more years for them to develop. We're also going to buy what we don't have, right? So if we need it for one of our verticals where we believe we can make a big difference, case text is a great example of that. Legal is a huge vertical for us as a market. And we think Casetext had a big advantage in what they were doing with their generative AI and their approach, and putting them inside Thomson Reuters will be a huge advantage to our legal customers. So I like being in a world where we can do all three, because it allows us to make those decisions and invest where we need to.
But this is also a great example, right, where Thomson Reuters has distribution to all the legal firms for Casetext to kind of go and build that would cost a lot of money and resources, right? And now you guys can buy it and drop it in, and you have access to the whole sales team that Thomson Reuters has, right? So that's going to be the case for a lot of startups.
We also have some great questions coming in from our audience, so please keep them coming. But one top question there is about Moat in AI startups. I think you guys probably spend a lot of time thinking about them as well. A few months ago, there was a leaked memo from Google talk about how large language models may not have moat if they face competitions from open sources. So in your mind, what's the right moat for AI companies? Do you want to start?
You know, I still think it's, if you get out there first and you get the customers and you get the revenue and you get people using the technology, that's still going to be a huge moat, right? It is in tech in general. A lot of things can be copied. There can be fast follow, and some of those companies will, eventually lead. But I believe moat is still in getting out there and getting the customers first. Having the best technology does matter. Open source has an advantage because there's more people working on it, more people adding to it. And generally speaking, if the rules apply, open source will probably end up leading in the end. That's my prediction. So I think if you look then underlying, what is the infrastructure and what is the technology underlying that's actually going to support both open source or the large language models from people like Google and OpenAI, is that where the leader is going to be there, right? And I think it's exactly why Databricks, bought Mosaic ML, because they know that infrastructure is going to be key regardless of the model.
Yeah, we believe that it's the data that is definitely going to be the moat, right? Finally, that you come to the point where how do you get to the data? How do you use that data to train your models better? But then on top of it, how do you kind of, basically add to the data so that your models are the best, right? So creating this feedback loop where you train the model, and then have your customers use it, and based on that, give more feedback to the models and make it better. I think the people who get there, get the data first, are probably going to be, the winners in this, in this era of generative AI, because for the first time, data is probably going to be the moat, and your access to data is going to be the way you prevent other people competing with you.
Lots of people in our audience are also corporate leaders who want to better understand what's the best way to adopt AI technology. I think that's a conversation happening across boardrooms in enterprises. And you guys see it firsthand with a lot of your portfolio companies and companies you sit on board with. What are the common ways you're seeing people are adopting, and what are the top concerns there?
I mean, I think he pointed it out, that data is a moat, right? And the data has to be accurate. And exactly the first speaker talked about an example in legal where the person had cited cases that never occurred. And so you have to be sourcing the data from a trusted source, right? And so I think that's going to be really important, and you're not just wildly going out there and grabbing, whatever's out there. So I think that's pretty important from an overall perspective in the question. If an enterprise is going to use it and they're going to tap into AI, they should know the underlying source and where it's pulling from, and make sure that that is an accurate source.
Look, I think I've seen this a little bit with predictive AI, right? When we were looking at it and investing, all the CIOs would come in and want to get a demo from the predictive AI companies. They would say, hey, we have to make every company, every knowledge worker AI enabled. I think what people forgot was that what is the value, what is the problem that the AI is solving, right? And I think that doesn't go away with generative AI, because you can have people in your team, both from your CIO, from your technical team and your strategy team, looking at generative AI or the new version of AI. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, if it's not solving a problem within the enterprise and creating value, either for your customers or for your support team or for your development team, I think it's going to fail. So I think that is, everybody kind of, says, yeah, we should do something around generative AI, right? That's going to be probably a mantra within the boardrooms. But I think figuring out what problem are you going to solve with this is much more critical than actually figuring out the technology.
Using someone else's foundation model or build your own model is a common debate happening on enterprises now. Which one will reveal, or you think it will be coexisting in a way?
I think definitely coexisting. There are some organizations and verticals that do not need to go build their own models, and there are some that will benefit from, building a model. It's exactly why Mosaic ML did so well and got acquired for 65x their revenue, is because they had if you will, a rubric that would show you, should you build your own model? Under these circumstances, yes. For these reasons, no. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty good way of looking at whether you should bother to build your own model, in my opinion. There's several other technologies and companies out there that are doing the same thing, that are helping you evaluate how you will benefit if you build your own model or if you don't.
I think I agree. It'll be a hybrid thing. I think most people will probably take an existing open source model and probably train it with their own data and protect that model once it's trained, rather than kind of developing something from scratch. But there will be tech companies that probably will take an existing model and change it a little bit better or differently because it applies to a specific vertical, whether it's healthcare, whether it's legal, whether it's something else, financial. So yeah, I think it's going to be a hybrid. But I think most of the models that people are going to be using in the enterprise are probably going to be open source that has been trained with their proprietary data.
And some people also ask about the hallucination problem in AI models, because as we know in enterprise settings, especially in some highly regulated industry, the room for error is pretty low.
Yeah, look, I think it also depends on what it's trained on, right? And I think a lot of time, the ChatGPT or GPT-4 and 3 and 4 hallucinates because it's trained on a lot of data around the web, right? But if you take like legal data, right, or if you take healthcare data and just train your models on that, you already decrease how much hallucination it's going to do, right? So depending on that, you can kind of constrain the amount of hallucinations. But there's going to be more technology that's going to develop over time to make sure that these models don't hallucinate.
Using your crystal ball a little bit, with all the current challenges and the opportunities with AI adoptions in enterprise we're seeing, what do you expect the next 6 months? We'll see the biggest kind of adoption or technological breakthrough with AI?
Wow, it's a tough one. I mean, I do think we being Thomson Reuters are in a really good spot, both in legal and in tax, because I think those are areas where, one, you can source the data from trusted sources, which we have, and two, those are verticals which can really benefit from both speed and the technology of AI. So, I think looking at those verticals, and healthcare is another big one, pharmaceuticals and healthcare in general, I think, those are areas that are going to benefit from this, right away.
It's hard to predict, right? I think people, whenever we talk about these things, we think that it's going to get adopted in the next 6 months. Yeah, I think this is like a decade-long kind of a process where this gets fundamentally brought in. But as Tamara said, it is going to be like where there is content-heavy, content-rich things like in legal or healthcare or financial services. I think those things, actually in software development, because in my opinion, software is probably the most expensive content that you can create. All of those areas, like in marketing, generative AI is going to have a huge impact. When does it go in and automate your business flows, your business tasks, and things like that? That is going to happen, but those things are probably going to take a lot longer.
One thing we know for sure is, Jay, you'll be busy deploying your $1 billion investment in the space. So we'll all keep an eye on that.
Will do.
So this is Jay from Sapphire Venture and Tamara from TR Ventures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Really timely conversation, considering there were $5 billion in acquisitions made in the last 2 weeks, partly thanks to Thomson Reuters. And so great conversation. Also timely with the next one, which is going to focus on the more private equity side of the conversation. And this one's sponsored by one of the platinum partners for the conference, Ontra. And with that, we welcome you all up to the stage to have a really good conversation about this.
I'm Mark Beckew, and I'm Research Director for AI at Futurum Group. Hard to say. I'm going to say couple quick words about this idea. I'm going to let my folks here introduce themselves. But we're going to talk a little bit today about how AI is impacting a vertical, right? So if you think about the legal profession, and we were talking a little earlier about, if you think about a profession or an industry-specific area where you have people that are careful, hopefully careful, or thinking about how they do things, typically they take their time in going forward with some sort of technology or change. So that's going to be an interesting thing to talk about here. So I'm going to ask Dr. Ma and Nate to introduce themselves real quick and tell us a little bit about why they're here to talk about these things.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Megan. I'm the Assistant Director at the Stanford Center for Legal Informatics. Our center is basically a joint operation between the Stanford Law School and the Stanford Department of Computer Science. Our kind of mission is building technology for law. So unlike kind of most lawyers that are in the space of law for technology, we're sort of the reverse. And so a lot of kind of the discussion that I'm hoping to kind of tease out today comes from a place where we've not only looked into the space of what these large language models can do, but what they could do and what they should do. And those are sort of like the areas that I hope to kind of tease out further today.
Yeah. I'm Nat Kunis. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Ontra. I joined Ontra a few months ago. Previously, I worked in real estate tech and AI for real estate tech. And one thing that really excited me about joining Ontra was the legal profession is an area that I viewed as completely ripe for disruption. The way that it's been done today, but it's also a highly regulated, right, and risk-averse industry. And so I've always found that if you can be successful deploying new technologies and softwares in highly regulated, risk-averse industries, then you could pretty much do it in any industry, right? Because that's probably one of the biggest challenges that you can come across. And so that was one thing that really excited me about Ontra, this vision of utilizing artificial intelligence to truly disrupt the legal profession, especially around contract management. And so I'm a few months in here and getting more excited even every day that I've been here. But yeah, excited to talk a little bit about legal and AI.
All right, thanks, Nat. So he touched on a little bit of a question we're going to go into with Dr. Ma and say, we'll ask you again, Nat, to talk about it a little bit more. But you say, what excites you about AI when you think about your context, right? And, there is a difference between the attention it's receiving now and how we've been down this road for a few years. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Ma first, and we'll go to Nat.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of tests that we do at our center. This was kind of put forward by one of our affiliate faculty, Professor Harry Surdin. And there's a test that I frequently talk about, which is what I call the Apple test. And with models prior to sort of the release of ChatGPT, we would ask this question, how many legs does an apple have? And the answer would always come back as an apple has 4 legs. Anyone who is of any common sense would know that that is a weird response. And of course, it was based on pattern recognition. So you'd see, it sees legs, so it's going to think it's an animal. However, with ChatGPT, we asked the same question, and the response was, an apple is a fruit and therefore does not have any legs. And I think for me, that was a key inflection point. And I think we still think about that test as a way to see how we think about use cases going forward. Are there ways to kind of push the limits of complex reasoning using these large language models? So to me, that I think is the most exciting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of at this precipice of really, changing the game within legal. And, the one that made all the headlines recently, right, was ChatGPT has passed the bar exam, right? Okay, that's pretty big, right? If you think about it, that's, But at the end of the day, what does that demonstrate? It demonstrates a academic kind of baseline understanding of the law. And if you think about it in terms of people and expertise, that aligns very closely with what you would consider like a junior associate to be capable of, right? They don't have the expertise yet in terms of applying the law in real life, but they have a great academic understanding. They graduated college, they have a great baseline, they've passed the bar exam. And so when you think about the maturity of these AI models today, that's kind of that baseline that you can draw a comparison to. And so what does that mean, and how is that exciting in the legal profession? Well, think about all the applications that law firms, corporate legal departments, private equity firms are deploying junior associates into, and think about how you can leverage AI to possibly supplement or replace some of those in that space. And all of a sudden, it becomes a force multiplier in your business, right? And so really, the thing that I'm most excited about is that human-computer interaction there, right, where you have AI supplementing a human capital workforce and all the possibilities that you can do to move faster, be able to make better investments. It really kind of changes the speed and pace at which companies can operate at.
Before I go to the next question, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball and say, interesting when you think about the legal profession, when you're trying to look at efficiencies, right? So when you're looking at, is there a lot of data is there a lot of redundancy? Is there something that should be automated? So Nat, can you talk about that a little bit more and say, you mentioned the junior associates and things like that, but do you feel like there's a runway for a lot to be done?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the legwork that you have junior associates doing, whether it's kind of first pass, first markups on different documents, all the way down to case study, research, right? There's all kinds of applications coming out there that you can leverage AI essentially to do that first pass, and then have a senior associate kind of come in and review the work. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I think that that kind of application of technology really allows companies to get way more efficient, both in their back office and their operations, and how they're trying to be more efficient and grow in that manner, all the way through to front office. Like in private equity markets, you're looking to try and make smart investment decisions, and you're trying to make them fast. I mean, you talk to a lot of these venture capital firms, and the number of times that they've had to move incredibly fast through a deal because there's so much competition to invest. Speed is critical. And so being able to move fast by leveraging technology to help you make those decisions, it's a game changer.
So Dr. Ma, same question, which really is, here's legal professionals, leveraging AI. What are the benefits, in your opinion, of them leveraging AI?
Yeah, so I think I'd start probably from the space of legal education. So working at a law school, one of our big critical questions is, how do we prepare our lawyers on the market? And it's quite a saturated market at times. And I think that with the onset of these tools, a lot of what Nat was mentioning is that we could start preparing law students at this stage. And I think about the class like legal research and writing. If you've gone to law school, it's one of those classes that everyone doesn't really want to take. They just want to get it over with. They're kind of taught the structure, and they're kind of like, I want to get to the meaty cases. I want to know about all those like groundbreaking seminal cases. But actually, I think the excitement of this technology is going to bring a fresh look into how these classes are going to be thought of. Legal research is going to change. We're going to have all of these, programs and software that's going to be able to kind of seamlessly integrate how they research. I know that when I was in law school, we often have this thing called the prison of Boolean search. We had to figure out which keywords to kind of punch in. That's no longer something that's necessary. We can actually go forward with full sentences. We can think about those ideas. I also think about using these models outside of this kind of accuracy paradigm and in the space of almost like a sketch pad. We can use it to kind of start and avoid some of that writer's block,
or maybe even look into kind of maximizing all these different templates and all of the past work that people have done and kind of look to them as example. And we can have that in a concentrated manner. So I think first, like from a legal education standpoint, there's a lot of potential there. I think from the other side of legal use cases is kind of piggybacking on Nat's discussion of the junior and senior associates. We're going to see a lot more ability for very tailored and highly valuable mentorship sessions. So I know that many junior associates, they're often paired with partners. Some of them in the room, they know that you don't have a lot of time on your hands. And so kind of thinking about a first-year associate, most law firms, they'll let me know that, hey, you know, the first year is kind of a write-off for us. We need the first-year associate to understand the client base, how you speak to clients, how you interact with them. You can kind of do all of that with large language models to kind of build tools that could simulate some of these contract negotiations, simulate kind of how you kind of write these legal briefs and sort of maximize that commentary and guided commentary. And so when you have an actual mentorship session between a first-year associate or junior associate and a partner, it's going to be incredibly valuable because the associate is going to come prepared and they know exactly the questions that they want and where they want to improve. So
No, I have a question for you. All right, so we talked about this before we came up here, and I'm interested to give the folks here an idea of context of before and after generative AI, before and after. So you're mentioning a lot of things that, Dr. Ma, you're talking about a lot of things that really have to do with where we are in this explosion of generative AI. Where were you thinking before? You know, when you were thinking about AI as it applies in the field, and Nat, if you can take a shot at that too. Let's do Dr. Ma first.
Yeah, so I think that's a really fantastic question. A lot of, I think, pre-generative AI, there was some discussion about NLP, some discussion about information retrieval, but they're kind of quite niche, quite frankly, to the legal market or to even law schools and lawyers. Most of them kind of are married and tethered to Office 365, in particular Microsoft Word. And I think that lawyers had always felt that this was the tool that they're comfortable with. They've wrestled with and gone through, working with all the formatting questions. And now that they've graduated, they're still going to be kind of trapped in this Microsoft Office space. But I think this interesting turning point is maybe the release of not only Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI and the kind of democratization of this technology, but on the other hand, its announcement on Copilot. And so there's this kind of reality now that's set with lawyers that, hey, this might actually be integrated with this tool that we love so much. So how do we deal with that? And so I think that that's kind of how I see it. A lot of the times lawyers are not only risk averse, but change averse at times. So I think that no matter all this flashy technology that's been out there, they didn't see the urgency that has now struck with generative AI and large language models. And I think that's why it's been kind of quite a big discussion.
So, and just to be clear, we talked about there are some vendors out there that have offered AI services to the legal community, and you're saying this is game-changing?
Yes.
Okay. Nat?
Yeah, I always go back to, technology for technology's sake is not very valuable, right? And I think it has to solve a real problem in someone's business or daily workflow, right? And I think the more that you can provide that value to the end user, the more adopted, even in an industry like legal where folks are very set in their ways. Like I mentioned, I just came from real estate. If you thought legal was really set in their ways, real estate's even worse, right? These people are like still, doing everything on paper, and they look at a building and they go, "Oh, it looks great." I think the value and the utilitarianism of it has to be, paramount. And I think the area that's most changed with generative AI is ultimately the user interface, because what you've now changed is instead of previously you'd automate a workflow by like shortening a couple clicks for them. Now you're using natural language to communicate what you want. So a lawyer can sit there and get a document back and say, change the jurisdiction to New York, right? And it will AI can automatically write the right clause and obligations in there to update that based on what it believes you're trying to accomplish there. Then you can have a human come in and review and kind of bless the final document. And so changing that interface is actually, in my mind, one of the biggest game changers there, because that's what's going to provide the most utilitarianism to them, right? That's what's going to speed it up versus just having some drop down or something where they have to say, like, change jurisdiction to, like, it can still work that way, but that interaction point is really critical.
Very good. So we had one question wanted to save for last, and it's an interesting one. We all agreed it was an interesting one to approach. So what are the actual risks of applying AI in the legal and private market space, and what are the steps you should take to mitigate those? Dr. Ma first.
Yeah, so I think there's been quite a bit of discussion already on this notion of fact hallucination, and that's certainly a risk and a technical risk that we think about a lot. But I might say something a bit controversial and actually talk about maybe stepping out of the accuracy paradigm in some of the use cases we're thinking about. And what I mean by that is there's a kind of tethering that we have to use large language models for absolutely just about anything. And a lot of the use cases that people are discussing are the automation of sort of these, highly repetitive tasks that do require an extent of precision and accuracy. But actually, how often do you ask a lawyer or compliment a lawyer by saying, wow, you are very accurate? Instead, I think that sometimes what these tools are incredible for is this narrative component and this ability to kind of develop sort of argumentation technology. One of the things that we've experimented with was trying to capture what is that value add of a partner. And so many of you who have paid lawyers are probably asking yourselves that same question. And we actually did an experiment of, what is the sort of difference between what a litigation partner would see versus what a transactions lawyer or a transactions partner would see. And we saw that there were these marked differences. And so how do we capture that in our training data so that we can have models that almost simulate? If I was redlining a contract or, marking up a contract, can I get an opinion of something that's weak language that could subject me to disputes? That's one area that we could think about. The other side of kind of playing on mitigating some of the risks is actually understanding.
Wait a minute. When you said that, are you saying that the lawyer puts together the language and the model checks it, or the other way around?
Actually, the model is not checking any of that language. What I'm referring to is actually building a tool that a lawyer could mark up, and this is a little bit more of that human-machine collaboration, but a transactions lawyer could mark up a contract, but it might click a button which will give you commentary on what a litigation partner might have marked up in the same contract. And we've noticed that actually from an analog perspective, partners frequently go to their friends in different departments to ask if their language is ironclad. And we're just kind of simulating some of these scenarios. The other side that we often think about is, can we simulate contract negotiation, contract sort of positions and strategies? And so a lot of these exercises aren't necessarily kind of driven by this accuracy question. And I think if we're playing into almost the narrative argumentation structuring, then we don't have to be containerized by this fear of fact hallucination, because what we're depending on is not actually this precision and accuracy. What we're interested here is alternative perspective, finding different paths to get to those solutions. So,
Nat?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Dr. Ma mentioned is it's spot on, and it's actually not the future. It's here today, and I think that's actually a service that Ontra even offers within our tool set, is that ability to serve up alternative language that might be better used in this use case based on this large data set that we have. So the AI will actually read through the contract and suggest markup language that you can then review. And I think to answer the broader question that was asked, I think the future of this is this marriage of AI plus humans. Having that senior associate be able to go in and be a more efficient, wiser senior associate because the AI technology is serving up insights to them. I call it, this concept, and I didn't invent this, but it's this concept of the systems of intelligence, right? You're leveraging technology to help you make smarter decisions in your day-to-day workflow. And it's doing that by using these large data sets, identifying trends, serving up, using generative AI to actually propose, different language, different clauses within your contracts, so that you're running a better, more resilient kind of business as you go forward. And so that's kind of the biggest change that I see coming forward. And it's, a lot of it's here today. I think that's a key takeaway.
Perfect. Well, we're out of time. Appreciate it. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Dr. Ma. Mark, good as always. And thanks, Ontra, for sponsoring this last session. The next session is sponsored by Protect AI. And this one is on regulation, who's going to set the rules for AI. And if we could have Amanda, Jerry, and Ian come up, and I'm going to join this. And while they're coming up, want to remind everyone that the cameras at the back are for the live broadcast. And so even if you just glance it, you mess up the live broadcast. So if you could give it 2 feet with the room and not stand at the back, that would be ideal. Thank you. Hi, Amanda.
Excellent. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm really excited to kick it off. My name is Amanda from the Responsible AI Institute. We're an Austin-based nonprofit that works to help organizations and businesses scale their responsible AI. I'm really excited to be joined by this panel in this moment where there's so much buzz, and specifically regulation, and that idea of the regulations, guardrails, how it relates to innovation and regular business operations. So today, let's go ahead and jump right in with a question about what do each of you think is driving the demand for guardrails today? And if you could each answer what you think brings us to this specific moment and introduce yourself at the top of the question. Let's start with you, Seth.
All right, I'll skip the introduction. But, I think in November of last year, there was this seminal moment when the world first got their hands on ChatGPT, really accelerated the first couple weeks of January when it started hitting the news. And then the way this technology is built has some inherent issues, with how the data is collected, how it's used, how it's taking people's identity, how what it does to copyright. And so I think this, on top of what that looks like in the context of what we've seen with social media, and the maybe not so regulated as it should have been use of social media, I think this is really leading us to this moment.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry Iman. I serve as Director of Emerging Technology at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I think the key to understanding this current inflection point in AI is understanding what's changed in the past 5 to 10 years. Nothing about the current AI revolution is particularly novel in terms of methods. The same methods that are powering chatbots and other generative language AI, at least, are the same methods first pioneered in 2017 with a seminal research breakthrough known as the transformer. We've had the same models since 2017 that are powering, in large part, the innovations of today. So what has changed? What's changed are 3 things: data, compute, and applications. The AI world has sort of been in this sort of Brownian motion style random search across the innovation landscape to figure out where is the data going to come from to scale these transformers, from where they were in 2017 to things we see today. How are we going to get the compute, and how are we going to network the compute together in order to increase our model capacities and computational throughput by hundreds to thousands fold? And then finally, what applications are actually going to be available to deploy these AI models within toward practical impact? I think the inflection point we see today is basically a confluence of these 3 pieces falling together. And as as someone in government in the regulatory sphere, what are regulators going to care about? They're not going to care about the underlying basic model architectures. Those are already been disclosed. We understand the model architectures pretty fully. What regulators are going to care about are the novel elements: data, compute, and applications, because those are the things that actually define what these AI models are doing in the real world.
Hey, Seth, awesome job in the keynote.
Oh, thank you.
I love that you brought up transformers, so it's great to get on the technical side. So AI and machine learning has been a critical driver of digital transformation. That's why we're talking about guardrails, and to set up the moment here for the discussion around regulation. This digital transformation, it's really about how organizations and enterprises create new products, new services, reduce operational costs, further delight your customers. And I've seen the adoption of AI and machine learning really deliver results here, where I've been the AI and machine learning leader at Amazon, at Oracle. Today, I sit before you as the CEO of Protect AI. We build solutions for security, GRC of AI and machine learning. And as I think about AI and machine learning and the value, I was on a call recently with a customer, and my co-founder, Dee, if you're in the audience, I think you're over there, raise your hand. He was asked, talk about the differences between AI and machine learning and kind of the moment we're in generative AI. And one thing he said, which was, I thought, really interesting and a good explanation is, AI is the vehicle for digital transformation. Machine learning is the engine. Now, as we think about the past even just 6 months, generative AI, it's moving extremely fast. This car is blazing down the highway. And Goldman Sachs just came out recently and said, you know what? Generative AI can deliver upwards of $7 trillion in added global GDP. That is insane. I mean, we are flying down the highway in this car of AI. This machine learning engine is humming. Now, so what do we need to do? We need to make sure we drive it responsibly. We need to have safety checks. We need to do the proper basic maintenance. And we need regulation. We need GRC. We need security practices for AI.
Yeah.
And we need standards.
True. Yes,
Absolutely. To work in collaboration. Yeah, it's really helpful to get that context from those of you who have been leaders and working in this space, and to look at what's unique about this moment as that car is hurtling towards us. Regulation is coming at the same time. And I feel a bit of empathy for our regulators, because it's difficult to think about regulations for AI that are future-proof, that have all of the right considerations when the use case can be so different. So what are some of those challenges and considerations for regulation in this time, in your opinion? Maybe we can start with you, Ian.
Yeah. So as we talk about regulation, there's the EU AI Act. We're seeing stuff happen in the US with the AI Commission Act and others, even just in New York, as we look at HR AI use cases. As we talk about the key challenges, so some of the things that I wrote down and was thinking about is, how do we measure risk? How do we audit? How do we set guardrails, as you mentioned, Seth? And how do we comply? So we have to have systems in place and a foundation of this knowledge. Now, I have worked with tens of thousands